Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, I'm Simon Swan, the Global Solution Director for New Mobility and Airport Hubs at Arcadis. And I've got 24 years experience of integrating technology projects into the built environment. And Arcadis is a global design and engineering company. In fact, we're the second largest architectural practice in the world. And like you guys, we love living on planet Earth. So much so, we've put protecting the planet and our way of life at the center of our global strategy for our business. And I don't need to tell an audience like you guys at this type of events that we are consuming all the resources and heating the planet. And we've only fairly recently harnessed technology to improve quality of life. And that we've got this responsibility to steward the planet and to protect the planet as well. And that integration of technology, like the internal combustion engine, for example, are creating polluted and congested cities. Many communities are transport disadvantaged. They're either physically harmed by it. For example, 30,000 people die every year or are seriously injured in road collisions. And thousands of people are killed by air pollution as well. And remember Ella Kissy Deborah, she was the first person in England to actually have air pollution as the cause of death, unfortunately. And so many humans are harmed by it, but also many can't afford it, and many simply can't drive. So there's about 18 million adults in the UK who can't actually drive. 19% of people in the UK population have absolutely no access to a car or a van. And black people are twice as likely as white people not to have access to one. And people can experience a variety of harms, including abuse on public transport. You remember Melania Shamanat and her partner Chris were subjected to a horrific homophobic attack on a bus in 2019. And it's important to remember that people's needs for accessing services are very different. So access to a nursery or a park or a medical centre or a religious centre might be very different and to a degree than other people wanting to access a sports stadium or a motorway, for example, or an airport. So some people are transport disadvantaged as they don't have as many transport options to get to where they need to go to, including many people in rural areas. My mother-in-law, for example, she's missed her last 2 doctor's appointments because she literally couldn't get to the hospital. And much of the housing in the UK is actually near roads, is populated by those disadvantaged communities, people in communities as well, and they're more likely to suffer the ill effects from pollution and more likely to be involved in an accident. So how did we get to this position? So there's a psychologist, Dr. Ian Walker. He did a famous study where he coined the term motor normativity. And it's basically the concept that we allow the risks in our lives from cars that we wouldn't otherwise accept in other parts of our life. And we also fall for the is-ought fallacy, which is just because something's always been the way it has been, it ought to be that way. For example, we've always driven cars and owned cars, so that's the way it ought to be. But society is dictating that we have to have a big, fast car. We've grown up with James Bond, Mad Max, the Batmobile, and we're being told that we should be able to drive everywhere we want to go. We feel it's our right, and we've been indoctrinated in this from a very young age. And poor Peppa Pig has had quite some time in the press recently. But I do note that everywhere that they go in their car as well. I remember sort of 15 years ago, and I actually bought my son one of these big toy multi-story car parks with a car wash in it. I mean, from Woolworths. I mean, what are we thinking? Absolutely crazy. And in case you're wondering why there's a picture of Steve Carell there with getting his chest waxed, it's a reminder that that's the only instance of a film I can think of where there isn't a manly car at the centre of it, where the main character actually cycles a bike. But the funny thing is, it's called 40-Year-Old Virgin. I mean, we can't keep giving people access to cars. We can't keep giving people cars. As the population grows, they literally don't fit, and it makes no sense. Every car takes up about 14 metres squared of space. And if the population in London grew by 3 million by 2050, and even half of those people had a car, that would take up 21 million square metres of space, which is the size of Hammersmith and Fulham. Like, they literally don't fit. And remember, cars do nothing 95% of the time. Our answer to date has been investing in more roads, wider roads, and more car parking lots. The governments and DOTs and engineers are in charge. We need them to think differently to solve these problems. And we're seeing elements of that. And so Transport for London, for example, have an aim that by 2050, 4 out of 5 journeys will be done by active travel or by public transport, which is great. And it's why we will see greater restrictions over time on cars and car movements in cities as well. It's just not a fair way of people accessing what they need. It only serves some people, and it comes with an enormous cost to health, for example, and access for others. We got rid of our car about 2 years ago. We live outside inner London. We've got a driveway, but we just found it was impossible to get around. It was too expensive, and it was just too harmful for the local environment. I've got a blog called Dude, Where's My Car? You can follow my exploits with my family as we live a car-free life. And I also got this really annoying rhyme that my kids hate, which is, I'm not anti-car, I'm anti-waste, and an unused car is a waste of space. So, I love my car, and I remember when I first got it, I lived in the countryside, and it was the only way to get about. In fact, I brought a car to London 25 years ago, and I've got great fond memories of having used cars. In fact, one of my last cars, the windows in the back, the electric windows, would only work if you turned the stereo on in the front of the car. So, you know, these cars have personalities, and we all grew up with these cars, but they are actually a threat. And technology, when it's integrated wrong, is a threat, and it brings additional problems, for example. Cars in historic streets, look at York, for example, or take hired scooters and electric bikes. Paris have had a load of problems with the way that they were first integrated, and are actually they've banned the hire scheme now. So they're great at reducing some car trips, but then they introduce additional problems as well. But we've had this over-reliance on this single technology for ages, for cars. And we've even designed cities around them, positioning hospitals at the outside of cities and building parking lots in their space. And climate change is only going to make it matters worse for the poorest people around the world. And we're going to increasingly see an investment in infrastructure resilience, which would be exacerbating the problem, rather than dealing with the needs of everybody to access services. So introducing new tech like drones and electric vertical takeoff and landing, which is also part of my job, is very fine, very exciting. But providing that it reduces something else. It reduces our need and the congestion on roads, for example. It would be awful if we fill the roads with cars and then we also fill the U space above our heads with drones and eVTOL, for example. So we've got to be really careful in how we introduce this new technology. And look at EV chargers, for example. When they fail or when they're too expensive or the pre-authorization charge is too high, or they're badly designed, or they don't allow disabled drivers to access them, it actually sets us back in a way, and it makes that transition a little bit harder. And the thinking that it's okay to drive as long as it's an EV is not going to help many of these congestion problems. But we've never changed our way of thinking, and that's what I'm trying to get to. We need a new way of thinking. The opportunity is to use technology in the right way and a just way. We could abandon our cities, let them rot, move to the country, move out all the jobs, work from home, and we're going to see a huge number of other problems as a result of that. These are some photographs that I took on a recent trip to Atlanta, and they have some serious problems with the way people have moved around the cities from one area to another one as well. In fact, I took most of these photographs myself in this presentation around cities around the world, and we love cities. We love the heritage, the multiculturalism, the arts. We love visiting them for sports events. 80% of the US population lives in cities, and urbanism, of course, is a growing trend. But we can do things better. We can create policies that work at a national, regional, and local level, but we've got to do it in an equitable way. We're going to have to be tough. There is a saying that traffic is like water. Turn up the heat and it will evaporate. But I would add, do it wrong and it will also boil over. This is Streatham here, where I live, and they introduced an LTN recently in the Streatham Wales area. And it's great for those residents who live there who don't have a car, and it's really nice to cycle through. It's got a really good feeling in that local area. But the adverse effect is that the Streatham High Road now is absolutely chock-a-block. And my kids who go to school on the bus now find that their journey has doubled just trying to get to school. So some things will need to change, some things will need to tweak. But these are all teething problems, I would suggest. But we need to integrate these new changes in an equitable way as well. I recently went to New York Climate Week, and they had an artist drawing these sketches whilst listening to all the conferences. And urgency was a key theme, of course. And I believe we need to urgently fuel climate solutions with transport equity. At the moment, we predict car traffic, and then we provide for it with new roads. But instead, let's ask everyone how they can get what they need to thrive within the constraints of the planet that we live in. And if we tackle the problem head on with a new way of investing in transport projects, we'll actually see a reduction in emissions and people will get what they need to thrive. So let me just build on a concept by Bridget Doran and her paper Just Now, who I met last year in Australia. And the basic concept is that we should shift from providing for mobility for providing for access to services, which means we need to ask everyone, what services do you need improvement to access? Who access needs to be improved? And there's 4 areas that need to be developed to create a roadmap. We need a really strong vision to set out exactly what we need to be investing for, supported by an accountable government that has a real clear plan to ensure we get to where we need to get to. We need authentic engagement across industry and community and cross-party agreements, but also cross-governmental departments as well. And we should be speaking to those communities and those people not currently getting access to what they need. And do we know who can't get access to what at the moment? I don't think we do. Thirdly, new mobility. If we're going to meet everyone's needs, we need to enable new ways of moving people and goods, and to ensure we incorporate new ideas and technology and infrastructure such as DRT, demand responsive transport, and car sharing and bike schemes and healthy street audits as well. And fourthly, we need to measure progress. We have the tools, and we hear around the conference all these amazing tools that we've got and a collection of data, and we can also create this data to work out where people are going and what access they've got to services, or the people that don't actually have. So we can look at it through three lenses. So nationally, getting that vision at the top is really important, and without it, everything is pushed back. And as previously mentioned, transport is about access to services, so we need to include the departments in the government to decide who needs to get access to what, whether that's health, education, employment, or housing. Otherwise, transport decisions are made on the wrong basis. Engaging with all communities is going to be really, really important. So that cross-departmental sharing of investment to create these new mobility solutions, such as extensive bike infrastructure, and promoting mass car sharing schemes and community transport solutions as well. And the technology exists to ensure that we can collect this data. And we could collect it at a national level, and then we will understand exactly how we're going to prioritise all of this investment. So from a regional perspective, this is important because it links the national vision and policies through to the local action plan. So it's really important, to drive investment in local projects. But we do need that authentic engagement across all the sectors, and many regional bodies do this already. Transport for West Midlands, for example, but we need a systematic way of ensuring that employers are included as part of that engagement process. And regional community transport is going to be really important to ensuring that people are travelling across regions as well, and connecting staff from those regional assemblies to the community transport operators is going to be very important. Travel surveys might be able to help us understand who needs to get to the hospitals and universities as well. Just yesterday, I saw a post from the Commissioner for Cycling, Will Norman, and he was describing how since 2016 the cycle path network in London has quadrupled. And somebody said, well, has there been any access to the London Cancer Club yet, and hub yet? And the answer is no, but we don't really know. So how are we going to measure improvement in people getting access to the services we need? We don't just need to build more infrastructure. It needs to be done in a way that is actually going to get people access to where they need to go to. So from a local perspective, this is probably one of the most important areas, of course, as the most resource-efficient way of people accessing what they need is ensuring they do so near where they live. And do I dare mention 15-minute cities? The concept is not a conspiracy to constrain or restrain people. It's just common sense and good town planning to make sure that everybody can get access to what they need without having to travel a very long way. So strong policy at a local level is absolutely key. TfL's aim is commendable, so read equity in motion, but there's still a long way to go to meet their objectives without any additional funding beyond 24-25. That's going to be a real challenge for them. The number of road deaths in the most deprived areas in London are double the least deprived areas, and 76% of Londoners don't live within 400 metres of the strategic cycle network. And unfortunately, 97% of women between the age of 18 and 24 have experienced sexual harassment in public, which is obviously a terrible statistic. But back to the climate for a moment. I do believe that extreme weather events is going to accelerate And that means that engagement with local communities is going to be really, really important to understand how to create resilience from everything from transport to housing, and to involve the advocacy groups as well is going to be important. So understanding which communities need what infrastructure, for example. So I've set out a proposed roadmap for transport infrastructure, for transport investment, for ensuring that everyone gets access to what they need within the constraints of the planet. What are the chances of winning? I'm actually really optimistic, despite all the anti-net zero hype that we see in the media. And we should be emboldened by some of the cities around the world and what they're doing. For example, Utrecht in the Netherlands, and they have some amazing living streets, the Woonuf living streets concept. And let me just finish off by saying, last week I was interviewed by a group of under 10-year-olds who are doing a sustainable transport project, and we explored many of these concepts that I've just explained today. And through their exceptionally complicated questions to me, I did get the impression that they understood exactly what we're trying to get to here. And also engage regularly with all of our graduate community who come to work with Arcadis, because we're putting sustainability at the centre of our business plan, and they get it too. We get it, and I hope you understand some of the concepts and can take them away and apply them within your own industries as well. Thank you very much. That's me. Any questions?
Question at the back there. Again, we are running slightly late for lunch, so if we can keep this to the point, I'll be very grateful.
I wanted to thank you for your lecture. It's a very, very interesting topic. I personally don't own a car, and I use a bike for many places, but I do feel that in certain situations, a car would be the only option. Cold countries like Canada, people that don't use bike. I don't completely understand what are the alternatives in those situations.
No, don't get me wrong, as I said, I'm not anti-car. Yeah, I do think cars are a really important means of accessing services, and they probably always will be. My point is that integrating new technology needs to be in a way that it's going to increase the accessibility to those services. And yes, growing the transport network in terms of cycle infrastructure could be a way of doing that. But in some environments, you're certainly going to need to still maintain a car. Yes, that car could be an electric vehicle, or in the future it may be a hydrogen vehicle, but this isn't an anti-car message. This is a let's improve the accessibility to services message.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And I'd like to say that motor normativity is my new favourite word, and I'm going to try and use it in conversation by the end of the day. Simon Swan from Arcadis, thank you ever so much for your time. Okay. Thank you, everybody.